was I added this for the old guys. Nice.
Yeah.
Second thing was Lily has relabeled and color coded all these.
Label, baby.
Yeah. So white is basically interior lights. Are you starting now? Okay, so switch up here, turn the light on so you can see everything. This panel right here controls all of your 110 or 220 switches. So these are like running off the inverter, regular, like starboard outlet turns on all the outlets on the starboard side of the boat, port outlets, microwave, refrigerator, ice maker, all the big heavy duty stuff. 220, we only have two 220 options, and that's for the hot water heaters. Okay, generator needs to be running for 220 to work. Just the inverter needs to be running for the 110 to work. Okay, we don't have a 220 inverter. We can't get 220 off of just straight batteries.
All the words and pointings on video too, so you can...
So, and then when we get to here, we're just gonna get ready to go for a boat ride. All right, we'll go through starting the generator and stuff later, but if we're just going for a boat ride, it's all the red switches. So GPS on, radar on, VHF, AIS, data boost on, autopilot on. Okay?
Yep.
As long as all those red switches are on, we're good to start the engine and go for a ride. Okay, now if it was nighttime, these orange lights are all your exterior lights. So you might want to put on your tricolor light, maybe throw on our nav lights because it's still close to sunset, but you don't need those to start the engine and navigate. Firework launcher, you're quick. We'll show you that later. These all have to be turned on manually. I don't know why, but these two do have to be turned on manually. The brightness setting is linked to all of them. So if you just hit the power button on this one again, change the brightness, all three of them will change. Okay, so at night, these are screaming bright. And during the daytime, these are almost too difficult to see because they're old and they're burned out. This is actually a perfect time of day to be able to see them and see what they do. Key thing with moving the boat is it's a hydraulic steering system. It's very hard to feel, and you can turn the rudder too far one way or the other and blow through the hydraulic lines. So that's why we always start the electronics, and right here we have our rudder indicator. So that shows right now it's 2 or 3 degrees to starboard. If I move the wheel, you can see the green indicator move. So I move it left to port, you'll see it start to come down to port. So I very rarely have had to go outside 20 degrees, but when shit hits the fan, you sort of kind of forget what's going on. You keep turning the wheel. You really got to look at that rudder indicator and make sure you're not going too far. There is a little bit of a stop to it, but in kind of like a crunch mode, you won't notice that stop and you'll blow the hydraulic line off.
And what happens if you blow the hydraulic line off?
The hydraulic fluid will drain to the bilge, you'll lose steerage, and you'll have to repurge the hydraulic system. And now I have like gone half a turn past and not blown it off, so there is some safety factor built in there. So I think you gotta like really hit it a couple times, but you just don't want to. So get used to knowing where your rudder is all the time, and don't ever start the engine and try and move the boat without the rudder indicator on and functioning. So to start the engine has 2 dedicated starting batteries. They're each down there near the engines, and there's switches that allow you to turn them on and off. They stay on all the time because they're not going to wear down. The alternators, when you start the engines, charge those 2 batteries back up. And they're independent of everything in the house. So you can leave the refrigerator on and drain the whole thing down to nothing, and those 2 engines are still going to start. So now in starting the engines, it's all push button. First thing you have to do is hit this on button here and turn it on. Hold it down for a second, and you'll see the lights come on, and the gauges will pop up, and it will beep in a second. Those beeps mean that the glow plugs are warm enough for you to hit the start button. Don't ever hit the start button before you hear that beep. Now, also, don't hold the start button for too long. I'm pretty sure that's how I screwed up the starboard starter the first time. I let it stay engaged after the flywheel was already running. It grabbed onto the starter and kept it spinning. So, and one time when I tried to shut down the engine, I hit the start button instead of stop, and I heard it, and that's where I know I did some damage to the starter. And it's hard to see. You got to bend way down here to see which button, and they all look the same, and we're old and our eyesight sucks. But just be really careful about how long you hold the start button down, and when you stop the engine, make sure you're hitting the stop button. Start engine. starboard engine runs about 10 degrees hotter. We're not quite sure whether that's just the gauge or whether the engine's actually running hotter. I shot it with my temperature, my laser temperature, and it seemed fine. They both seemed about the same temperature on the block. So I have a feeling it's just something to do with the gauge. But that's starting the engines.